A grieving city and its mayor are making moves toward healing today in the wake of the assassination-style killing of two New York City police officers this weekend in Brooklyn. This afternoon at 2:47, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio led a moment of silence at City Hall, 3 days to the minute after the ambush killing of officers Rafael Ramos and Wen Lu. Earlier, the mayor visited a makeshift memorial at the site where the officers were killed. And we have new video showing the moments around the brutal killing. Images of the chaotic moments just after the suspected shooter, Ismail Brinsley, opened fire. And police released surveillance video of Brinsley at a Brooklyn mall holding a bag they believe contained the gun that he used. Yesterday, Brinsley's sister spoke out, saying her brother was disturbed.
He was an emotionally troubled young man. Clearly something's wrong. He should have been offered help in the system, right? But he wasn't.
Meanwhile, Police Union President Pat Lynch, the man who said the mayor has blood on his hands for the officer's death, is agreeing with the mayor that politics should be put on hold until Lu and Ramos are laid to rest.
After we do that, and everyone has a moment to think, we're going to ask the question, why did this happen? Who caused it? What inflamed it? And they should be held responsible.
As for protesters, not all want to take the time out. More protests are planned for 5 p.m. here in New York, as another case is raising questions about police accountability. The Justice Department has announced it will investigate the fatal shooting of Dontre Hamilton by a white police officer in April in Milwaukee. Witnesses say Hamilton grabbed the baton of Officer Christopher Manny, who shot Hamilton at least 13 times. A local prosecutor declared yesterday that Officer Manny operated in self-defense and will face no charges. Joining me now is the Democratic representative for Wisconsin's 4th District, Congresswoman Gwen Moore, and national reporter for USA Today, Yamiche Alcindor. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Congresswoman Moore, I know you're urging the Justice Department to broaden its investigation into the Milwaukee Police Department. How do you see yesterday's decision by the prosecutor in the context of broader discussions the country has had about policing?
You know, I was very disappointed with District Attorney Chisholm's decision to not charge Officer Manning. But I heard every single word that he said. I read his report, and I understand how he got there. Based on the past practices and procedures, long-standing practices of the Milwaukee Police Department, where they're given wide discretion in these cases, and where there's no obligation whatsoever to try to de-escalate once there's a threat, that their training allows them to shoot until the threat is stopped. And I think that that the Justice Department ought to come in, not only because of Dontre Hamilton, but we have seen this. I can go all the way back to Ernest Lacey and Daniel Bell, and we think that there is something systemically wrong with the way our police operate and the training that they engage in.
So let me ask you, Congresswoman, in terms of those past practices, in terms of those systemically wrong practices that you just said, as you know, there were protests yesterday in Wisconsin and more planned for this afternoon in New York. Do you think the protesters need to take a pause or change their tone?
You know, we're not in New York. I think I did take a moment of silence today as I watched television. This is Milwaukee. We're not in New York. The mayor has asked for that in New York, but here in Milwaukee, people are continuing to protest, and I support people's First Amendment rights to protest. The family in Milwaukee wants that support at this time because they want to elevate the cause of Mr. Hamilton. You know, Mr. Hamilton, what we have learned from the district attorneys not charging is that in Milwaukee, there is absolutely no right. We believe that people's civil rights are breached, that there's a very, very low bar with our police department in terms of supporting and reinforcing people's civil rights. And we think that the Justice Department needs to come in and look at this. Dontre Hamilton was lying on a bench, taking in the summer sun, and he was fired by Police Chief Flynn because we feel that the officer escalated the situation beyond what was necessary. He was breaking a law. And based on the so-called broken windows theory, where you just prosecute every single little case, this man was sleeping in a public park during the day and breaking the law. And this is a situation that escalated from a man sleeping in the park until him becoming killed, unfortunately. And so we think that the patterns and practices of the police department ought to be examined so that we can come together and really look at whether or not the police have any obligation to do something to preserve people's civil rights during these arrests.
So I want to move from Milwaukee to the broader national context and ask Yamiche, you've been covering the protests around the country extensively from Ferguson and beyond. What does this moment mean for the broader message that protesters want to get out?
I think this moment means that there's a lot more work to be done in their minds. While the protesters that I've talked to say that it's unfortunate and that they're really sad that these officers have been killed, they say that this is really needs to still be a further conversation. When you have in their list more and more names being added to the list of unarmed black men being killed, these protesters say that this is a really special moment in American history where now we have people's names just continuously being added and people really continuously wondering why are people being killed when they seemingly aren't doing anything that deserves a death penalty. Now, of course, there need to be conversations about the idea that targeting police officers are horrible and that this idea that, you know, that this can't be something where people turn violent. But I think at the same time, the protesters that I've talked to, the ones that are really at the forefront, they're really just as much concerned about the violence against police officers or the violence against ordinary citizens. So that I think that for them, the idea is they don't want to see violence on either side. They don't want to see police officers shot, but they also don't want to see unarmed black men shot.
Congresswoman Gwen and Yamiche Alcindor, thank you.